Are you a new poker player struggling to make profits at the tables, trying to figure out what cards to play, when to bet, when to raise, when to bluff? Try out these 5 simple strategies that I'm going to walk you through in today's video. These 5 crucial but simple adjustments that I made to my game have literally propelled me throughout my entire professional poker career, and I think they will help you out too. So without any further ado, let's jump into it. All right, guys, counting down from 5 to 1, here we go. Number 5 is to play your draws aggressively. So guys, this is the number 1 type of hand that my students struggle with the most. They ask me, Nathan, what do I do when I have either a straight draw or a flush draw? I don't know if I should be calling, if I should be raising, if I should be betting. So let's talk about those situations right now. All right, guys, the first thing you need to know about straight draws or flush draws, SD, FD, is that you only have around 30% equity on the flop. And let me break that down for you, by the way. Equity is just a fancy term we use in poker, which essentially means your odds to win the pot. So for example, if you have a flush draw or a straight draw and you are up against a hand like top pair, for example, on the flop, you are only going to win the pot with the best hand by the river roughly around 30% of the time. Now, as we're going to discuss here though, making the best hand in poker is not the only way to win a hand of poker, and that is why good poker players know that flush draws and straight draws need to be played differently. You can't just call all the time, because if we only call, we're only going to win 30% of the time. That is not a winning proposition. So we need to learn how to check raise instead sometimes in order to turn these situations into a profit for us. Let me give you an example. You've got the 10-9 of hearts. Flop comes down with the 8 of spades, jack of clubs, and 5 of hearts. So this is a nice little spot here. We have an open-ended straight draw on this board. So there are 4 remaining 7s in the deck, which will give us the nut straight 7, 8, 9, 10 jack. And there are also 4 remaining queens in the deck, which will also give us the nut straight. And when I say nut, by the way, that means just the best straight possible. And also, crucially, I hope that some of you savvy poker players also saw that there is a heart on this flop. And what that means is that we also have a backdoor flush draw, meaning that if it comes with a heart on the turn and river, we would also make a nearly unbeatable flush. So guys, even though we do not currently have any pair, we only have 10 high, this is still a decent spot. And versus aggressive players in particular, who I know are likely to bet at this flop with a wide range of hands, I am often going to check raise in this situation instead of just calling. And what this does in particular is it gives you 2 ways to win the pot. When you make a raise in poker, you are giving them a reason to throw away their hand right now. Perhaps this player just has a hand like ace king or ace queen, for example, and if you can make a strong raise here, there's a lot of players who will be persuaded in today's games to throw their hand away, and that is a massive win for us because we only have 10 high in this situation. But guys, the other crucial point here that I always try to remind my students is that when we raise here, it doesn't take away from our equity in the hand. We still have the exact same odds to hit our straight or our backdoor flush by the river, and therefore when you mix in some raises in a situation like this, not only are you making yourself infinitely more difficult to play against, but you are also just giving yourself more ways to win. Guys, in a nutshell, this is what good poker players are doing in today's games. They are mixing in some aggressive lines like this with their draws in order to give themselves more ways to win the pot. If you're only just calling every single time, which is what most beginners and recreational poker players do, you're not going to turn a long-term profit in these situations. All right, guys, let's move on to easy poker strategy number 4, and that is to flat your ace king on this particular flop. Guys, winning poker players know how to read board texture when they have a hand like ace kings. So let me walk you through an example right now. So you raise it up with the ace of hearts, king of spades. This is one of the best hands in the game. I probably don't need to tell you that. And by the way, if you want to know exactly what hands to play, I do have charts and diagrams walking you through all of that in my free poker cheat sheet, and I will leave a link to that in the description description below. But anyways, the flop comes down with the Queen of Hearts, King of Clubs, and Jack of Diamonds. So boom, right? We've hit our top pair. This is amazing. But guys, this is where hand reading and specifically understanding board texture really comes into play. So we are up against a tag player here, and this stands for tight and aggressive. By the way, that's actually the play style that I teach in my free poker cheat sheet, which once again I'll link up below. And the reason why I teach this strategy is because this is the best strategy in my opinion in today's small and mid stakes games in order to turn the maximum profit. You are essentially playing as it sounds. You're playing a relatively tight range, so that means mostly just good hands, and you are playing very aggressively after the flop. So when this player leads into us here, I do expect them to have a decent hand, and I also expect them to have some bluffs in their range. But crucially, guys, while we have top pair and we do expect to be ahead of this player most of the time here, it is very important, guys, to understand that Queen, King, Jack is totally different from a flop of 3, King, 8. A flop like 3, King, 8 has no draws on it, and it also has almost zero possibilities of 2-pair hands, because a flop like 3, King, 8, what kind of 2 pairs can they actually have? King 3, 3, 8? Well, tight and aggressive players, they don't play those hands, because those are crappy hands that only weaker players play. But on a flop of Queen, King, Jack, there are many, many more straight and 2-pair possibilities. For example, Queen, Jack has 2-pair on this board, King, Jack has 2-pair, Ace 10 flopped the nut straight, 9-10 also flopped a straight on this board. I hope you guys can see where I'm coming from here. This is a much more dangerous flop for our hand in comparison with the 3, King, 8 board. So in a situation like this, you do not want to be raising. You want to just flat call instead, because the problem with raising here, guys, is that versus a decent player like a tight and aggressive player, when you raise here, you're only going to get action from all of the hands that crush you. And what I mean by that is that they're going to fold all of their trash, all of their bluffs, like their ace deuce, their pocket threes. They're just going to throw those hands all away, and they're only going to call you or re-raise you when they have hands like pocket kings, pocket queens, pocket jacks, ace 10, king queen, king jack, queen jack, or 10-9, all of these hands that we already talked about that have us absolutely crushed on this board. So guys, this is super important to understand board texture as I just walked you through in this situation. Queen, King, Jack is totally different from 3, King, 8. You need to understand that you need to play your Ace, King completely differently on these 2 flops, especially when you're up against a competent player like a tight and aggressive. Let's move on to easy poker strategy number 3, and that is to never pay off the nits, aka the rocks. So let's talk about another common decent poker player type that you're going to face in today's games, and that is the nits. Now guys, this is the tightest player at the table. This is the player that's sitting around waiting for really good hands like pocket aces, pocket kings, ace king, ace queen. They're looking to make a flush, a straight. They're basically in there as nut peddlers. They're waiting for the best hand. They don't have many bluffs in their range, so when they make a strong play, as they're going to do in this example here, we need to respect that. So guys, I have made so many videos here on the channel talking about how to bluff these players because they're so easy to push around. Basically, when they don't have the nuts, it's easy to bluff them out of the pot. But guys, once in a while, they're going to have 2-pair, a straight, something like that. Everybody does get dealt good hands sometimes, and it is crucially important that you understand how to make the big fold. So amateurs love to give these players money, but you as a savvy winning poker player know better. Let's talk about it right now. You've got pocket cowboys, second best hand ever created, with the king of spades and king of diamonds, and a rock, aka a nit, raises you on the turn of the 9 of diamonds, jack of spades, 8 of diamonds, and 5 of clubs. Guys, building off of what we just talked about, understanding how to read board texture, the alarm bell should be seriously going off in your mind right now, because there are so many different possibilities of hands that beat us here. Let's just talk about a couple of them. Nits are often going to be set mining you, and what I mean by that is they're calling you with a pocket pair to try to hit 3 of a kind kind on the flop. So that would be a hand like pocket nines, pocket jacks, pocket eights, or pocket fives. All of these hands have hit a set, aka three of a kind, by the turn here. Also, this player could have called us with a hand like queen 10, or in some cases 10-7. Both of those hands flopped the straight on this board. A hand like 6-7 has turned the straight with the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are also several two-pair possibilities on this board that make sense. A jack 9, a 9-8, for example. Guys, the bottom line is what you need to understand is that the tightest player at the table is literally never bluffing you on a board like this. I mean, these players just simply do not bluff. As I talked about in my first book, Crushing the Micro Stakes, when these players raise you on the turn, it is almost always the nuts. And when they raise you on the river, it is literally always the nuts. Guys, I know it is painful. My students in particular complain all the time, Nathan, how can I fold my pocket kings, my pocket aces? Guys, believe me, I don't take any comfort in folding this hand either, but I understand the board texture, the player type, and the situation here in order to save myself money. When the tightest player at the table raises you on what I call the big money streets, the turn or the river, guys, trust me from my nearly 20 years experience as a professional in this game, they always have it. They're not bluffing you. Make the fold here. Thank me later. All right, guys, moving on to easy poker strategy number 2, and that is to call wide versus the aggressive poker players. So the number one player type that my students ask me about these days, and it's not even close, is the aggressive players who are always betting against you, bluffing you, and so on. People tell me, Nathan, I can never put them on a hand. So let's talk about that right now. And basically the bottom line is you have to make some big calls versus these players sometimes in order to win. So you've got pocket sevens versus a loose and aggressive player, and they fire the double barrel against you on a board of jack 6, 4, 9 rainbow. Rainbow, by the way, means that there are 4 different suits on the board, so there's no possible flush draw. Guys, even though this is a very scary proposition, the definition of a double barrel, by the way, is when somebody raises pre-flop, then they bet the flop, and then they bet the turn as well. We do need to be flat calling here, specifically against this player type. Once again, this is the bluffy player type who I know is going to be betting here again with hands like ace king, ace queen. Heck, I have even seen these players on total air balls here with a hand like pocket threes or an ace deuce. Guys, sometimes versus these loose aggressive maniacs in today's games, you simply have to put your foot down and make some big calls, and sometimes it's going to be painful. They're going to show up with the king jack here and you're going to have egg all over your face. But if you fold too much versus these players in common situations like this, guys, you are simply playing into their game. I know this specifically because I play a loose and aggressive style myself, and I know that people fold to me too often in common spots like this. So guys, sometimes when you got middle pair and you're up against one of these loose and aggressive players and they bet again on the turn, go ahead and make the big call and we'll see what happens on the river. All right, guys, moving on to my number 1 easy poker strategy, and that is to check call with top pair on this specific board. Once again, we're going to talk about hand reading and board texture here. Guys, winning poker players know that check raising on this specific flop that we're going to talk about right now is a losing play. So you raise it up with ace 10 of hearts. Pretty good hand, definitely a hand that I suggest playing. That is a hand that is included in the starting hand selection diagrams in my free poker cheat sheet. Once again, I will link that up in the description below if you want to know all the hands that I suggest playing. But the flop comes down with the 10 of spades, 9 of spades, and 8 of diamonds. Once again, guys, alarm bells need to seriously be going off for you when you catch a flop like this. There are so many different straight possibilities, 2-pair possibilities, and massive combo draws, like a hand like a 10-9, a 9-8, a hand like an ace-8 of spades for the monster draw, or even the flop straight with a hand like jack-queen or 6-7. Guys, bottom line, in a situation like this, you want to be leading or check calling. You do not want to be check raising on these highly coordinated, action-heavy boards like this. As we talked about previously in the video, check raising in a spot like this is simply a losing proposition for you because you're going to just fold out all their bluffs and you're only going to get action from all of the hands that I just discussed that have you crushed in this situation, like the queen jack, the 7-6, the pocket 10s, and so on. Guys, I hope that these 5 simple tips will help you out in your small stakes games. And if you want to know my entire strategy to start winning fast. Grab a copy of my free poker cheat sheet. I'll link that up in the description below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. All the best at the poker tables, unless you're on mine.